You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Force 13 live coverage beginning this evening once again on Tropical Storm Elsa, which was a hurricane earlier today and is now churning along the coast of the southern peninsula of Haiti. We just had a little issue with the bottom bar, which should be visible now. There it is. That's what we're up to, and that will hopefully give you some important information as we go along today's stream. Currently, our estimate of Elsa is 70 miles per hour and a pressure of 1,000 millibars. That's latest from the Force 13 analysts. Hurricane warning is in effect, precautionary, I assume, considering that it's no longer a hurricane, but it's still pretty close for the southern part of Haiti. A tropical storm warning for the rest of Haiti and part of the Dominican Republic. And tropical storm warning also in effect for Jamaica and significant parts of Cuba. And these warnings could change when a National Hurricane Center update at the top of the hour, and that is why we opted to come on before then, so that we can give you that information once it happens. My name is Nathan Foy, and tonight we'll be having quite a lot of discussion mainly on this storm. We've got a lot of satellite views ready to pan through, and of course we've got the insight from our team tonight. We have Mike, Devon, Joey, Jonesy and Ryan S. Good evening to all of you.
Good evening, Nathan.
Good evening.
So the progress of this storm, Devon, do you want to start us off today? And he picked that moment to mute himself. He doesn't want to start off today.
No, I'm
sorry.
Accidentally muted myself. I apologize.
No worries. Go ahead.
I was talking and I was muted. No, but the progression of the storm is that this storm has certainly weakened a little bit. It continues to gradually weaken as it moves towards Hispaniola, which can be nothing but a good sign. Gradual weakening was originally expected by the HWRF, so it's really no surprise that this has dropped in intensity a little bit. We're currently in between aircraft reconnaissance missions. I believe the next one will be coming later on during the live stream, but as of right now, we don't have any low-level planes into the storm. I know that there's an upper-level plane heading towards the storm. Also very vital, but it's not going to give us any information about the storm's current intensity. Basically what ended up happening is that the storm outran itself. The mid-level center is about 150 miles to the east of it right now. So it's horribly unstacked. The low-level center is struggling to maintain convection over itself. It's now getting a blow-up of convection because it's nearing landfall, to be expected. But yeah, so far nothing but good signs, I would say, that we don't have a storm that continued to intensify as it head towards Hispaniola.
So, regardless of the storm's intensity, we are looking at significant rainfall totals for large parts of the Greater Antilles and then extending up into Florida, no matter how weak the storm might get later on. But talking about the actual intensity forecast, what's the best guidance that we can lean towards right now?
The latest intensity guidance right now, it really depends on if this thing actually makes landfall in Hispaniola or not. What we have seen is that the National Hurricane Center has gone weak with the storm because the storm's gone weak. So it does look like this storm is going to be weaker, and the weaker it is, the more likely that it's going to go further east. So this could potentially be even better news for interests within the United States that the cone keeps on going more and more east. Hopefully, that continues to be the case, and this storm continues to go off that way, but it's by no means guaranteed.
As always, on our live coverages of tropical cyclones around the world, we've been doing these live events now for 6 years. And as always, we take questions from the audience. You can start your message with Force 13 all in text on our live stream right now on YouTube, and we'll take questions as we go along tonight. Let's talk to, I think we've got Mike there as well. You're showing us some infrared satellite imagery right now. We just cut to it a little bit ago, but tell us what you make of this.
Okay. So with the imagery, there's currently massive convective bursts to about the north of the center because of the land convergence, which is actually causing a more rising motion, which is more favorable for convective bursts.
Correct.
These convective bursts have actually been benefiting the storm, as shown by Recon data earlier, as the storm's warm core continues to warm and the storm also began to deepen. And as it continues to pass near Hispaniola, I would expect that convection would still continue to pop off due to the convergence.
Now, our first question tonight from Cool Creeper Ryan: how slow will it get, as it's currently slowing down? First of all, is that true that it is slowing down already?
Yes.
We know it's forecasted, yeah.
Yes, it is slowing down at least a little bit. Last night it was going 30 miles an hour. Now it's, let me see what its current forward speed is. Looks like 29 miles an hour. So it hasn't slowed down a lot, but it should definitely start to slow down. The forward motion should slow down to a more customary 10 to 15 miles an hour as it starts to move over these islands.
Also with us tonight, we've got Joey. Any thoughts on the storm right now?
Not really much to say to start off, but some of the impact that we could see with the system. Heavy rainfall has already been mentioned. I'd just like to reiterate that dangerous conditions regardless of intensity, mainly due to rainfall. I think we outlined around 15 inches of rain could be possible for parts of Hispaniola. So regardless of intensity and regardless of how close the system gets, there will be dangerous conditions for any land areas that this system does come in contact with.
Yeah, 15 inches are the localized maximums to be expected in Hispaniola and also in Cuba. I think that might have been the case for Jamaica as well, I can't remember. And then up to the United States, they're currently suggesting, they were talking about, that must have been up there as well, I can't remember exactly how much. They were talking about 6 actually, localized maximums of 6 inches. That of course could change. The National Hurricane Center will be producing an update shortly, the full advisory, and this is why I wanted to get on the air before this, so that we can give you the very latest information when that comes out. Sometimes they do it a little bit before the hour, so we'll be keeping our eyes peeled for that. We've also got Ryan S. with us actually. You're in Florida. Would you like to tell us about how things are there and what your thoughts are from a little bit closer than the rest of us?
Yes. So here it's currently been raining for the past week. I am actually next to the forecast line. I'm expected to get probably tropical storm force winds here. I've seen them in around 40% chance of tropical storm wind force probability. I will keep you updated when more severe weather comes by, but as of now it's pretty good weather here.
And there is the tropical storm force wind speed probability graphic, showing that, of course, Haiti and southwestern or southern Cuba has very high chances. For Florida there, those general colours, the light greens into the yellows, I think yellow is the 30% band, and sort of that darker orange near the Keys, near Key West, is 50% there. That's for tropical storm force winds. I'm pretty sure those chances will increase. From what we've been looking at with the models, though, the storm does appear to be quite likely to be on a weakening trend all the way, and it could be a fairly weak system by the time it gets there. But is there anything that could any indications that it could go contrary to that at all?
Well, it would have to basically thread the needle between Jamaica, Hispaniola, and Cuba in order to be able to do that, and that's looking unlikely. The only place that this thing would be able to do any sort of significant intensification, at least from the cone's perspective, would be if this went into the Florida Strait. That's basically the only place it would be able to intensify.
So there it is once again on the latest satellite imagery. I think this automatically updates, yes. Looking at the complexion of the storm right now, a significant bit of convection, not that large really, over the center of the storm. It's just keeping it up. It's actually been on the verge of being an exposed circulation, hasn't it, for the majority of today? We're just waiting for the National Hurricane Center's update, which is right around the corner. And let's see if we can take any more questions whilst we wait for that. There's a lot that came in actually just now. Let's see how slow. We had that one, of course, about it slowing down. What is the chance of it becoming Category 1 again? And can it intensify further after going past Cuba to Florida?
This is a common question that we had earlier in the stage in the public server right before we went live, and it's the same answer that I had then. The odds of it reaching higher than Category 1 is slim to nil because of the fact of the sea surface temperatures in the Gulf outside of the immediate coastline of Florida really aren't the warmest to support a stronger than a Category 1 hurricane. It also will depend on how the shear would be in the Gulf, as well as the relative humidity, and all that is still uncertain at this time. So the odds of it being a Cat 1 in the Gulf at this point is unlikely, but not out of the impossible. But it being stronger than a Cat 1 is slim to nil when it comes to the Gulf. I don't think it's going to get past Cat 1 if it does become a hurricane again. Its best chance at becoming a Cat 1 again is if it misses the southern part of Cuba, which is very mountainous, and it reaches the 29 to 30 degrees Celsius temperatures right along the Cuban coastline right in that big part of the bay there of the Caribbean Sea.
That would absolutely be the place, or if not, in the next 12 to 24 hours in this little gap north of Jamaica.
Yeah, that too. I was seeing some very big 29 degrees Celsius waters there as well. But the odds of it becoming higher than Cat 1, I don't see it happening. I'm thinking, and this is my personal prediction and analysis from what I've seen, and I said this earlier, if it does make a second peak, it's only going to be like the bare minimum hurricane, maybe gets up to 80, 85, but it would have to go into the right conditions to become a hurricane again. But
that's what you would think at this time of year, at least.
Yeah. That new convection, though, that's been popping up over the last hour or two, kind of had me a bit concerned that it is starting to strengthen again.
More questions. Did you think Elsa would rapidly intensify if it moved much slower? So that's a little bit of a hypothetical thing. If it was moving more slowly through the Caribbean Sea, would it have intensified more rapidly?
I think
No
if
question about it.
no question about it, yeah, because the reason why, although it's working in moderate to low shear, the only reason why it's not as strong as it could have been is the speed of it. Usually, you don't see tropical cyclones moving this quickly unless you're talking about a storm that's efficient heading out to sea, or an extratropical low heading over towards Iceland and Europe and all those areas. That's when it's usually moving about 30 miles an hour. You rarely see a tropical cyclone moving 30 miles an hour through the MDR and the Caribbean, in the Atlantic. So, and because of its quick movement, and although it's in moderate to low shear, it's just shearing itself. So that's why it hasn't been able to strengthen past, I believe our peak that we had it at and the NHC had it at was 85 miles an hour. So if this was moving more slowly at, like, say even half the speed that it's been moving at, like 15 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, then because the sea surface temperatures in the MDR and the Caribbean, they've been warming up, you definitely could be talking about a Category 2, Category 3 hurricane, and we'd be in a stage 6 or 7 on the CDPS easily.
Crikey. Speaking of which, on the CDPS scale right now, Devon, what are we looking at there? And for those who are new, summarize what it means and where we're at with it. Is Devon with us? I threw it to Devon because he's the creator of the CDPS scale, measures the cyclone destruction potential, a way of measuring the potential impact from a tropical cyclone beyond the hard numbers given with the storm's intensity that they come out with and whatnot, because storms are often a lot more than that. As far as I recall from earlier, was it a stage 3?
That was from the update earlier. I did see in Devon's status, and I talked to him about an hour before we went on the air. This was still when we were in the stage. We are now at a stage 4 on the CDPS for Hispaniola, Jamaica, and Cuba. And if this was like a video update, the term that we'd be using is significant damage.
More latest satellite imagery here of Tropical Storm Elsa, and you can see quite clearly how it's been affecting the island of Hispaniola, Haiti in particular. Very interesting looks on the western side of the storm's influence. You can quite clearly see for large parts of today there, you can see the innermost workings of the storm, the circulation spinning, partially exposed for a large part of today. The update is out from the National Hurricane Center right now at 5 p.m. They are sticking with 70 miles per hour and a pressure of 1,000 millibars. So that is actually what we've got. So that's a good call from the analyst team from 3 hours ago, I think. And they
Great
are
job.
expecting it to stay at 70 miles per hour for about 24 hours and then start to weaken and then intensify again to a secondary peak at 65 miles per hour. And that would be, I think, before reaching Florida.
And speaking of Florida, I'm seeing in the forecast advisory, we now have a tropical storm watch in effect for the Florida Keys from Craig Key westward to the dry Tortugas.
Yep, so that's confirmed there. These are the changes at this advisory. Tropical Storm Watch, as we just heard there. Florida Keys from Craig Key to Dry Tortugas. The government of Cuba has issued a tropical storm warning for the provinces of Ciego de Avila, Sancti Spiritus, Villa Clara, and Cienfuegos, and a tropical storm watch for the provinces of Mayabec and Havana. So the warnings on the bottom of our screen will be updating a little bit in about 10 minutes time probably, that we'll be able to get those updated on the screen. But those are the latest changes. A hurricane warning remaining in effect then for southern Haiti from Port-au-Prince to the southern border with the Dominican Republic.
I'd also like to add on that earlier today that Florida went into a state of emergency. I will pull up the counties in a little bit here, but Florida is in a state of emergency.
In the chat.
Big Bend of Florida. Give me a second while I pull up the
While you pull those up, I see in the chat
counties.
pressure go down. Yes, the NHC has put the pressure down to 1,000 millibars. Thanks to the most recent drop zone, actually found a pressure of 998. So it could honestly be even lower than the 1,000 that the NHC went with. But I'd say that the 1,000 is definitely a fair analysis of the pressure.
Just to report that none of the current watches and warnings have been removed, just for those areas that may think that they're out of the woods. We're expecting a lifting of any warnings. Nope, it's as it was before.
Same as the 2 o'clock. That's the last one that had the biggest downgrade of warnings. The northern end of the Dominican Republic was downgraded from a tropical storm watch to nothing at 2 o'clock, as well as areas that were under a tropical storm warning were downgraded to a watch, and the hurricane warning was downgraded to a tropical storm warning. That was the last major downgrade, and that was at the 2 p.m. advisory. And as we've heard, you said, Nathan, we've had some upgrades. Some of the tropical storm watches in Cuba have become warnings, and now we have tropical storm watches in the Florida Keys.
So getting back to with the state of emergency for Florida.
Yep.
The state of emergency order applies to the following counties: Charlotte, Citrus, and I apologize if I say some of these wrong: Collier, DeSoto, Hardy, Hernando, Hillsborough, Lee, Levy, Miami-Dade, Monroe, Pasco, Pinellas, and Sarasota County. And this also includes the Tampa Bay region.
Most of those being on the western coast of Florida, and obviously Miami-Dade is down there on the southeastern part of the state.
You'll hear me typing. I'm just working on all of the warning information for the bottom of our screen shortly, because I'm the person who does that as well as hosting the stream. But yeah, go ahead.
And to mention, someone was asking me earlier today, what about Broward County? Does Broward County have to worry about anything? I don't think you said Broward County in that list of state of emergencies.
Nope, it was not there.
I know parts of western Broward County that go along I-75 are in the cone, but not the populated areas of Broward County. For those that don't know Florida, Broward County is the county right above Miami-Dade, which includes Fort Lauderdale, Daytona Beach, those areas. So the part of Broward County that's in the cone, same with part of Miami-Dade that's in the cone, is for the Everglades. Now, just because that Miami and Fort Lauderdale and all that are not in the cone, they're still going to be the northeastern and the southeastern side, the right side of the system, which is always the worst side to be in when it comes to tropical cyclones, especially that right front quadrant. So they're definitely going to be getting some rain. They're definitely going to be getting some wind. I've been taking a look at the HWRF the rain swaths, wind slots as well, but the rain swath has a lot of these areas in Miami-Dade, Broward County, and even the county above Broward County. I'm not sure what that is off the top of my head, being in the 8 to 16 inch range for rainfall, with some isolated 16 to 24s. I think the Weather Prediction Center has only gone with 2 to 4, some 4 to 6s in this area. They think that the majority of the rainfall is going to be on the western side of Florida from Tampa downwards.
Okay, so if you missed it just now, the National Hurricane Center have issued their 5 p.m. Eastern Time advisory. That's 9 p.m. UTC. That is the clock we've got at the bottom left there. That's the universal time. That is therefore 4 hours ahead of Eastern Daylight. Tropical Storm Watch now in effect for the Florida Keys from Craig Key, basically westwards. And the tropical storm warning for more provinces of Cuba now, and tropical storm watches as far now as Havana. Elsa with winds of 70 miles per hour, pressure of 1000 millibars. It peaked yesterday, I think, was it 85 in the end?
I think so.
85 miles per hour looked fairly good, and we were thinking for a time that it was going to really go for it. So let's see if we can take some more questions at this point. If it misses Cuba, will it rapidly intensify? Did we have that one before? We were talking about similar things.
I know we were talking about similar things. I don't think we directly had that.
Yep.
Again, the best waters is the close coastline of Cuba, just to the north of Jamaica, and just to the west of Haiti in that bay by Port-au-Prince, as well as the immediate coastline of Florida. The sea surface temperatures in the Gulf past the immediate coastline of Florida are actually, and I was looking at the anomalies, they're actually below average, and they're running cooler than normal, because they're actually running like, I think, high 26s to 27, maybe low 28s. So that really wouldn't help a rapidly intensifying storm. The shear is supposed to be low, but if it keeps moving quick like this, it's going to continue to shear itself. And honestly, if it misses Cuba, can it rapidly intensify? I mean, that all depends on if it slows down and what are the conditions around it. That's going to determine on if it would rapidly intensify. It would need the very warm waters in order to rapidly intensify.
All right, we're going to take a short break here, and then we'll probably digest the National Hurricane Center's information and see their new cones at the top of the next hour. It's coming up to the 5 p.m. hour here on our live coverage of Elsa. We'll be back in a few moments. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Tropical Storm Elsa remains shy of hurricane status. It's just trying to reclaim it back, but it's not doing a very good job so far. But it is producing a lot of rainfall for Haiti, and of course strong winds along the coast, where a hurricane warning remains in effect just in case. The storm is headed west-northwestwards by the looks of things, and will eventually reach the coast of Cuba in the next 12 to 24 hours. And of course will pass very close to Jamaica, which is under a tropical storm warning. Hurricane watches in effect for parts of Cuba as well, and tropical storm watch is extending as far as Havana now. Also, the Florida Keys has its first warnings out. Hopefully the bottom bar has the latest information as of the new update that just came out from the National Hurricane Center. We'll have the new cone for you in just a moment as well, and we'll be able to have a look at that and digest that properly and take a look at the National Hurricane Center's discussion. My name's Nathan Foy. I'm joined once again by our team this hour. We have Jonesy, Mike, Devon, Joey and Ryan S. Good evening once again.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, in the last hour, the storm hasn't done much by the looks of things. There's a blow-up of convection and then another little blow-up to the east of the centre. What is the storm doing right now in layman's terms?
Basically, it's approaching a lot of tall mountains, and those tall mountains are creating a lot of thunderstorms.
Well, that seems to have captured it fairly well. Let's take a look then at the National Hurricane Center's latest advisory. That's the key messages. We'll get onto that in a moment. There is, I think that is the latest advisory. Nope, no it isn't, not yet. Let me see if we can get the latest one. There it is.
I have it up.
That is now the latest advisory, so at least you get to see the comparison between the 2 p.m. and the 5 p.m. update there. And as you can see, National Hurricane Center do want it to remain a tropical storm right up the US East Coast to some extent. And the second peak that I mentioned earlier, the 55 knots, 65 miles per hour, is that dot at 2 p.m. Tuesday when it's just on the coast of Florida. So that is interesting to see. Are we, at this point, are we confident in ruling out the storm passing east of Florida entirely?
I mean, I would say so.
No.
I'm
Why would we be ruling that out?
Because it's not in the cone by some distance now.
Exactly. I think it would have to shift entirely east for it to go up the east coast. And it kind of
I mean, all right, I guess. We'll see.
point. It's stuck on the western coast path of Florida.
I
We
mean,
can only see.
it's done a south and a west jog tonight. I mean, you can always do a north and an east jog tomorrow. So, it's not completely impossible that it's going to go up the east coast of Florida. It's, at this point, very unlikely. I know there's still a couple of models that have shown it going up the east coast of Florida. Even one said it's going to go just out to sea, but I don't listen to that model. That's definitely not going to happen. But more of the models have been closing in on it going up the west coast of Florida, or it's just going to go up from south to north and make a landfall. Pretty much kind of like how Faye did in 2008, where it's in the Keys and then goes from the south part of Florida and up.
Yep, so that's where we're at right now. The storm, let me just get the technical information just for those who require that. It's currently at 17.5 degrees north, 73.9 west. That's about 130 miles southwest of Port-au-Prince, Haiti, the capital, 195 miles east of Kingston, Jamaica. 70 miles per hour, that's 110 kilometers per hour, sustained winds, moving west-northwest at 28 miles per hour. Current central pressure 1000 millibars, or 29.53 inches. Let's read out the hazards, because that's also quite important, of course. Hurricane conditions are still possible in the hurricane warning area in Haiti for a few more hours. Hurricane conditions are possible in eastern Cuba on Sunday. Tropical storm conditions are possible for a few more hours over portions of the Dominican Republic and are expected on Jamaica and over eastern and central Cuba on Sunday. Tropical storm conditions possible in the watch area in the Cayman Islands Sunday and Sunday night, and in western Cuba and the Florida Keys Sunday night and Monday. Storm surge, that is possible. The southern coast of Cuba could see a 3 to 5 feet storm surge, and the southern coast of Hispaniola 2 to 4 feet. And also in Florida, Craig Key to Dry Tortugas 1 to 2 feet if it occurs at high tide. Rainfall expectations now across portions of southern Hispaniola and Jamaica. Rainfall of 4 to 8 inches with isolated maximums of 15. Cuba, Sunday into Monday, rainfall of 5 to 10 with isolated maximums of 15. The Cayman Islands, rainfall of 3 to 6 inches expected. And in the Florida Keys and Florida Peninsula, 2 to 4 inches with localized maximums of 6. That, of course, could change, but I don't think it will change by that much in terms of hazards. So now I guess one of the bigger questions really is, will it regain hurricane status before reaching Cuba? Any opinion from our panel here?
Well, as I said in the last hour, and I said even before that in our public server on Discord, and I now have the sea surface temperatures up that I was talking about, its best chance at doing that would be the coastline along Cuba, as well to the north of Jamaica and to the west of Haiti, where you see 29 degrees Celsius waters, including some areas pushing, actually nice areas pushing 30 degrees Celsius in Cuba. That is where I feel is its best chance for it to become a Category 1 hurricane again, as well as just along the intermediate coastline of Florida.
I'm not so sure about that.
But
It will
I'm
have
not
weakened
so
a bit
sure.
there.
I'm not so sure about that. The only area would be right above the Keys. If it would go more out to sea, then no, it would definitely not re-strengthen, because you're talking about 28, possibly 27 degrees Celsius waters. Its best chance is right down here over by Cuba, north of Jamaica, and the Cayman Islands. That's its best chance sea surface temperature wise, and if it slows down and stops shearing itself because it's working in moderate to low shear, that's its best chance of becoming a hurricane again.
I agree with Jonesy there.
Yeah, right where your cursor is, I would say. That's where it would happen.
Much warmer sea temperatures there than it is where it currently is right now.
And not just that, but ocean heat content as well. Very high there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Would agree that has a better chance of intensifying off the southern coast of Cuba rather than the west coast of Florida.
Latest visible imagery, convection isn't pumping over the center, but it is at least enclosed now by the looks of things. We can't see the circulation exposed anymore. Some convection blowing up on the eastern side of the center. The western and southwestern side still looking very sparse indeed. There's even a little blow up there off the northern coast of Haiti right now as well. let's see if we can take some questions right now. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Is there still a chance that, well, this is pretty much what we've been talking about, this could become a hurricane again? It just dropped from 1,000 millibars to 1,002. Okay, so the pressure drop, does that correlate to anything right now? Why has it happened?
So the pressure drop, as Devin mentioned earlier, it's interacting with some mountainous areas, which means thunderstorms are firing up. And these thunderstorms are firing up and starting to wrap around the LLC, the low level circulation. What that means is, and what Recon found, is that due to this, these thunderstorms firing up, it's causing the pressure to come down a little bit in the area. And although it's interacting with these mountains, that could cause it to prevent it from becoming a hurricane right now. So it's pretty much just showing that the storm is just doing normal, storm interacting with mountain stuff, and it's just showing that it's, somewhat healthy storm that's maybe strengthening.
Yep. Later on, I would like us to take a look at some of the models if we can. In the meantime, let's take another look at what Mike is showing us right now, the infrared once again. In fact, we're showing it on our screen already here, so do you want to walk us through that once again whilst we have a look at it?
Okay, so basically we have the convective burst starting again because of the land interaction with Haiti. The mountains are creating convergence for the convection to pop up with. And as I explained earlier, that convection is actually helping the storm to deepen and its warm cores to strengthen.
More questions now. Will it make a landfall in Haiti? And if it does, how much will it affect its intensity and structure? That is the most immediate question, I suppose, because it is very close to striking Haiti. It looks to me like it's going to just miss.
So, I know I was doing this earlier, and I saw with the 2 p.m. cone, I was on the interactive cone. It only had a little sliver of it going across Haiti for a little bit. I have not had the chance to study the new cone yet for 5 p.m. So let's see what we got here.
Whilst we wait for that, here's the model spread from Ryan's screen. So the general consensus there is pretty much with what the National Hurricane Center is saying. Maybe a little bit of room to go a little bit further west before Florida landfall.
All right, I just did a quick look at the cone. So Haiti is now officially 100% out of the cone, and
Oh, you're right.
The center of Elsa, I was blanking for a second. It had the chance to go over slightly a little bit, but now it's made more of it's gone more west over the lot between 2 and 5 p.m. cones. And due to this western movement, because it went south earlier, there is now no chance, unless it does an eastern jog, north and eastern jog, that it's going to make a landfall in Haiti. So we can now rule out a landfall in Haiti.
Not that it means much. Let's not
Not
forget
that it, not that it means much. It's still being affected.
A common misconception we have to address every so often is that the be-all and end-all is whether the storm makes landfall or not. What you will also notice on the National Hurricane Center's graphic here is the orange blob around the center of the storm there, the X. That is the radius of tropical storm force winds. So all of those areas inside that orange zone is experiencing tropical storm force winds. So that is why people we always advise those who aren't in the cone that they're not entirely safe. It's just that the center of the storm is not very likely to pass over your house. But sometimes a storm's wind field can be several hundred miles wide, and if it decides to perch, the center of the storm perches on the edge of a cone, and you're 200 miles to the east, say, along the coast of Florida, you could still get hit by some serious winds. So that's just something that we have to point out every so often. More questions then. Impacts for Georgia next up. So you can see on the cone there, that's probably for Wednesday, and it would be a weakening tropical storm, but it wouldn't be completely gone. What do we think?
I gotta say, for impacts, I'll let you go first.
Well, the rainfall potential from the WPC has the coastline of Georgia and its surrounding inland areas with 2 to 4 inches of rain. The HWRF rain swath is in agreement with the WPC on this. A 2 to 4 inch area, some areas possibly to receive 4 to 8 inches of rain. So it is going to be a rainmaker for them.
Just go back to the that rainfall graphic because we didn't get to see that. The National Hurricane Center one. Weather Prediction Center. There it is.
Here it is. So here's the WPC rainfall graphic. So much different than what the the HWRF is saying, where it had a big area of 4 to 8 and 8 to 16 down here on the eastern side.
So because the HWRF is a little bit optimistic in terms of rainfall numbers.
Yeah, and it was missing the 4 to 6, which is over here, which is what the WPC said. But they're both in agreement of 2 to 4 inches of rain for parts of eastern Georgia around the coastline. And for probabilities of tropical storm force winds, that's the interactive code I was looking at. Portions of eastern Georgia, you are under currently a 20 to 30% chance of tropical storm force winds. After that, more going towards central Georgia, you are in a 10 to 20% chance. And going towards Atlanta, but I'm not sure if Atlanta's just in there, a 5 to 10% chance of tropical storm force winds. It would reach Georgia, the most southern parts of Georgia, between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. This is the earliest reasonable time on Tuesday, and the rest of Georgia between 8 p.m. and 8 on Tuesday and 8 a.m. on Wednesday. The most likely arrival time for tropical storm force winds, though, for Georgia is going to be for southern Georgia will be between 8 p.m. Tuesday and 8 a.m. on Wednesday, and the rest of Georgia between 8 a.m. Wednesday and 8 p.m. on Wednesday. So,
and for those who were wondering, Atlanta 7%.
Thank you.
So there we have it. And there's that. Just to have a quick look at that peak surge chart as well, just to show a visual representation of the potential areas there, 1 to 2 feet there from Craig Key westwards. It's quite a bit of the Keys, really. Good chunk of it.
Yeah, a very good chunk here in the Keys. There is no storm surge graphics out, unfortunately, for Cuba and Hispaniola. I know that we did make mention of it, 3 to 5 feet for southern Cuba, probably where the tropical storm warnings are currently, and the hurricane watches. I don't know if they've gone for central Cuba. I don't think they've gone for central Cuba yet, where the tropical storm watches are. And Hispaniola is 2 to 4 feet of storm surge as well. But very good chunk of the Keys here in the 1 to 2 foot storm surge graphic. And I think, I think we'll see either sometime tonight or definitely tomorrow morning, we'll start to see tropical storm watches pop up for mainland Florida. and we'll start to see surge graphics come out there, and it'll be interesting to see what they're going to issue on the west coast of Florida, because it's very compared to the Atlantic side, the Gulf side is very shallow, and it goes out pretty far. The shallowness and the I forget what the word's called. I think it's the shelf or something before it drops off, but it doesn't drop off for like I think 100 or 200 miles. So anytime a tropical cyclone affects the western part of Florida, we always worry about the storm surge because of it being so shallow. That usually ends up helping the storm surge numbers.
Let's jump to some more questions here. Is there a chance it goes further west and over Cuba it only loses 5 miles per hour and regains in the Gulf, making landfall as a possible Category 1? What do we think about that? Basically, the impact of Cuba, the landmass, mitigating the loss of the storm's intensity to just 5 miles per hour. Possible or not?
I mean, with the storm moving so quickly over the island, it's quite possible that it doesn't affect it very much. It's not like that the storm is very strong at this time. Basically, we'll just have to see, but I think that point is high because of uncertainty of just how much it's going to destroy the storm. Because it could very well skip over the island before that point and then re-intensify. So I think that's purposefully held high.
Tornado
also...
Freak says, is the low-level circulation and the mid-level now stacked?
No. And they will not be stacked while the storm is still moving at over 20 miles an hour.
Well, there you go.
And to go back onto the Cuba question, it also will determine on if it interacts with those very mountainous parts of southeastern Cuba where the tropical storm warnings and the hurricane watches are currently. If it goes overland there, then it's definitely going to lose more of its strength. But if it doesn't, and it interacts with that 29-30 degrees Celsius waters and goes in, makes a landfall, let's say, closer towards Havana, although Havana's on the northern side, but the same latitude or longitude of the, I think it's longitude when we're talking about west to east, then it would probably, keep its strength over Cuba as long as if it keeps moving quickly. And as Devin said, it could possibly re-intensify once it gets into the Gulf, and that's what the National Hurricane Center is expecting. They're expecting a 55-knot peak to happen in the Gulf.
What are the chances of Elsa going south of Cuba? I don't know if they mean completely. I would imagine those chances are very low.
Very, very, very low. I don't
Very
think
low.
it's gonna be very difficult for this storm to completely miss Cuba to the south.
I had that same question earlier. Very low, near impossible. And someone asked me if it did that, could it rapidly intensify? And my answer to that is no, because it would not deal with the warm waters that it would if it went close to the Cuban coastline. So the odds of it, A, missing Cuba completely to the south and then curving towards Florida, and B, rapidly intensifying, near impossible.
We're now joined by Christian as well. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Now, you're also tracking Elsa on board with us right now. Any thoughts?
Really, that's all that comes to my mind right now is those that are in the path of the cone. Start preparations, stay safe.
Well, indeed. I'm looking over the southern part of Haiti right now. Looks like significant thunderstorms and possibly rainfall occurring over there right now. Thinking about the wind radius, do you think the capital, Port-au-Prince, would be getting tropical storm force winds at this point, anyone?
Probably, I'd say, yeah.
The interactive cone has Port-au-Prince just in on the actually parts of Port-au-Prince is in the tropical storm force winds. Parts of it is not. So
Oh, I see. That's close.
It
Yeah.
looks like that the tropical storm force winds are starting to possibly move away out of Port-au-Prince.
Yeah,
But
making
it
its
can-
closest approach there right now.
It's making its closest approach, but I know they were under the tropical storm force winds earlier and for a while. So now it will be, if this right here down by the coast decides to move more northward, but I think Port-au-Prince is going to shortly be done with tropical storm force winds.
And you zoom out there, interesting to see whether Jamaica will get any of those tropical storm force winds. It's so weak on the southwestern side by the looks of things.
Yeah, so I've not seen what they've gone with for the southwest quadrant. I remember at the 11 a.m. advisory, they said it only went 30 nautical miles to its southwest. However, what I've noticed throughout the day, it has continued to make a westward jot, and now it's only showing clipping southern Cuba. I know in the previous cones, it's shown definitely going over southern Cuba. If it continues the westward jot, then the tropical storm force winds will definitely reach Jamaica, or at least the edge of Jamaica. If it gets to the capital, Kingston, that's what we'd have to see, depending on if it continues this westward jot. But I'm expecting it to stop the westward jot soon and start moving to the north and west.
Yep, chance is fairly low there. Most of Jamaica is under the green zone, which is less than 30%, just that little bit of the northern coast there, 30% to 40%. Cuba has a large part there that's well over 30%, 50% in some areas. Interesting to see, and of course along the coast of Florida, some 30% areas going right up the bend, and even for part of Georgia. Is Sarasota at risk for landfall, is a question by Jake.
So Sarasota is over here by just the north of Port Charlotte and to the south of St. Petersburg. The NHC currently, it looks like, is going over by Homosassa Springs as a landfall in...
That's a very fine line, though. It could be anywhere along there.
But it could be anywhere. So if it keeps moving westward, then it could go more towards the Big Bend. If it does an eastward jot, then it could go straight into Tampa or Sarasota. So Sarasota's near the dead middle of the cone. That's a fine line. So there's definitely the chance of a landfall in Sarasota. We won't know directly until as it gets closer to Florida, which would be Monday and Tuesday.
Alright, we'll be taking a very short break here. We'll be back in just a moment. Over the years, we've done updates and live coverage on literally hundreds of tropical cyclones, and in recent years, particularly in 2020, launching out in other regional channels, doing weather updates and coverages there as well. We also launched our Earthquakes channel in 2020 and are going forward on all fronts in 2021 with a community that's grown remarkably in the last year. But it's not just about you being along for the ride, we want you to enjoy yourself as well as an Ultimate fan, and that's why we've lined up a big chain of benefits for each various stages on our Ultimate Fan program. Welcome back. This is Force 13 Live, our live coverage on Tropical Storm Elsa, which is still just shy of hurricane status after it was originally a 85 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane in the Caribbean Sea. It's just south of Haiti, very close indeed. I've not measured the mileage actually, but it's going to pass very close to the peninsula there, and then move on towards looking like it's going to clip the southern part of Cuba rather than properly arrive there. And may well pass in between the channel between Jamaica and Cuba, and that would only be good news for the storm, as it would intensify most likely, or at least has the opportunity to intensify further once again. Back with the team, latest commentary on this. I don't know where we want to go to next. We usually just pivot along to whatever we go on to next. Anything that anyone would like to show us right now? We're looking at the infrared imagery whilst we go along here. Of course, if you have any questions for us live on the air, we're happy to take those as well. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. It will light up for us and we can take it live. What are the general chances of rapid intensification both before Cuba and after?
After Cuba, literally not near zero, unless it goes right here where my cursor is on the sea surface temperatures, just north of the Keys. That would be its best chance, but it would have no time whatsoever.
Well, that's a loading screen. It's not working for me now. I don't know why we can't get your visual up now.
Oh, that's fun.
Yes, it happens
dear.
sometimes.
Before Cuba, it would be in this very deep 29 degrees Celsius red and the light pinks of the pushing 30 degrees Celsius along the Cuban coastline. That is your best chance for a rapid intensification. It's mainly before Cuba. After Cuba, slim to nil. Just one little spot just to the north of the Keys, but it would have no time between that and
there we go. We finally got you back.
Hey, hello.
So those 29-degree waters there, mainly around the Cayman Islands up towards Cuba.
And then just one little patch right here, but as I said, no time between the Keys and the main part of Florida. So its best shot to rapidly intensify would be right in here, north of the Cayman Islands to the northwest of Jamaica and right along the Cuban Peninsula. There is a little bit of 29 degrees Celsius over here as well to the west of Haiti, which this is pretty much what it's going to go through, and it will determine, and we'll have to wait and see if it's going to go over southern Cuba, which by the trends today it's not, and if it's going to go right into the 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters. But after Cuba, that's your only chance right there, and that's a very small chance.
Yep.
I think it's safe to say we're not going to see rapid intensification after Cuba. Its best chance to rapidly intensify would be before Cuba.
Now we remember how the storm generated, and we're looking at models all the time. How well do we think the models have done so far on this storm?
The models so far have, at least on the track, they've been having a southern bias pretty much during this entire storm's lifespan. But they've done reasonably well. As far as intensity guidance, they've done not so well because they didn't, basically nothing that I know of forecasted this to become a hurricane. So the intensity guidance has been very poor. The track guidance has been okay. We'll find out just how good the long-range track guidance is once it passes these islands.
And there's some more visual looks at the storm on a wider shot to compare it on that wider view, how it stacks in terms of its size. It's a typical size storm, really, isn't it? certainly for the area and the time of year. Let's take some more questions. What caused it to weaken? That's one that I was not haven't been paying attention very much to the storm in recent days. So, what was it doing yesterday when it was peaking as a Category 1, and how did it start to weaken?
The forward motion basically caught up to it. I mean, it was in a place in the Caribbean where it was able to get some good outflow and it got a lot of convection going on. It was able to get up to a hurricane really quick. And now it was decently aligned. Now it just can't get itself aligned. The forward motion is inducing shear upon the storm and it's basically tearing itself apart.
Well, there it is in brief. Does it look like it could intensify before impacting Cuba? I know we're getting this question quite a lot tonight. I certainly think it can, as it looks to be going over a little bit more water. Obviously, that allows it more time to strengthen potentially. Certainly, the opportunity for it. Could it landfall in Jamaica? I think we're too far past that now, aren't we?
It would have to make a very, very westward jog, and when I say west, I mean due west.
Yep.
And it would have to go due west. All the models and the tracks are saying it's gonna start to move northwestward, and I think you're gonna see that over the next couple hours. So, landfall chance in Jamaica, slim to none.
More questions as well. Once this starts to aim towards Florida, what will be the worst impacts and where? From what I gather, it's mainly going to, I mean, if it's not very strong, which is what we're leaning towards at the moment, it would be a rainfall threat.
The main threat is rainfall, that is correct.
And I did see on the National Hurricane Center's advisory, along with the 2 to 4 inches of rain with localized maximums of 6, just on the end of their message, may result in isolated flash, urban and minor river flooding. So that's what they have out right now. We haven't looked at the discussion that they issued at 5 p.m. yet, and I'll just read a little bit of this out from the National Hurricane Center. Satellite imagery shows that Elsa looks ragged and disorganized at this time, with bursts of convection occurring near the low-level center and poorly defined convective banding. Some of this is likely due to the proximity of the system to Hispaniola. Air Force Reserve and NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft has reported reliable 55 to 60 knot sustained surface wind estimates from the SFMR, along with the latest central pressure report of 1000 millibars. So that's 60 knots that they've put the intensity at. As a result, little change in the forecast philosophy, approaching a weakness in the subtropical ridge caused by a large baroclinic trough over the eastern United States, which you could see on the earlier imagery actually when we were zoomed out. The global models forecast this trough to move eastward into the Atlantic, but the southern portion is likely to split off and become an upper-level low-pressure area over the western Gulf of Mexico. I did see that on models this morning as well, actually, with the subtropical ridge over the Atlantic situated to the east of this low. In response, Elsa should slow its forward motion, that's the effects of it, and turn northwestward during the next 48 hours, followed by a general northward motion on day 3 and 4, and recurvature into the westerlies after that time. So I'm just looking if there's anything else interesting just to take away from that. But would we say that there's a fair amount of confidence in that aspect of the forecast?
I guess so, yeah.
All right. I know someone or you asked Nathan earlier on how far off the coast it is. For that, I had to pull up radar scope and go from the point where I saw it's just south of to where it is currently offshore, off where the NHC is saying It is, and on that, I have measured 37.8 miles is how far offshore it is from Haiti.
Fairly close.
Close indeed.
Let's see if there's some more questions right now. What are the conditions like in the Gulf, and would you say that Elsa has lost essentially all chances to become a major?
Yes, it's lost. I will say that for a fact, it's lost all chances of becoming a major. Devin, if you would like to basically take over here and say why it has no chance of becoming a major, then I will let you go ahead and do so.
Well, it's a very small storm, and it is going over very warm waters, and the shear is virtually non-existent. But the problem with this storm that's going to have is that it should bold that, underline it, put it in italics, print it out, laminate it, should pass over these islands and become a disheveled cyclone. It should lose most of its formidable structure. If it doesn't do that, very well could become a hurricane again. It could intensify again. It shouldn't. Definitely shouldn't. So to say that all chances of major being eliminated, I completely disagree with that. It's around 1%. But yeah, I don't think that it's going to happen. It's going to require moving a lot of parts, and basically everything's going to have to go the storm's way, and we'll need a little bit of luck thrown in there as well. So I would say roughly 1%. But no, not all chances of major are gone for this storm.
And Devin, I tried to ask you earlier about where are we with the CDPS on the storm right now?
The CDPS for Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, wherever it ends up making landfall, stage 4, mainly due to heavy rainfall.
Yeah, and for those who are unfamiliar, could you give us a little bit of description on that?
So the CDPS is the scale that combines all of the effects from wind, storm surge, and inland flooding from rainfall all into one scale. A 4 out of 10 is quite the significant storm. It's better than 50%. So you take all of the landfalls that have happened in the Atlantic since 1988. This storm is higher than at least 50% of them. So it's above average, you would say. So
very
yeah,
interesting when you put it that way.
It is a very reasonably damaging storm that is going to go through the Lesser Antilles here.
The Greater
It's already
Antilles.
been through that.
Yeah,
Greater
no doubt
Antilles,
about
that's
it.
what I meant.
Of course, it's already been through the Lesser Antilles. What do we know anything about impacts there? Was it substantial?
All that I know, and the reason why I woke up yesterday to, instead of Tropical Storm Elsa going through Barbados and St. Vincent, we had Hurricane Elsa. Was in Barbados. They received hurricane force winds.
Yeah.
So I know those two islands got hurricane force winds. I did not hear much after that in the term of impacts. If anybody does know, then just tag us in Discord or in the chat here.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear your storm reports if you've had the storm already, and of course if you're in the storm, if it's safe to do so. It can quite often be very beneficial not just to have it on the air, but also for other people who might benefit from that information in one way or another. Let's see what else we've got. This is the latest National Hurricane Center forecast track on the screen once again. So Within the next 3 days, it's likely to draw very close to Florida. Landfall on day 3 or 4. That would be Tuesday evening, by the looks of things at the moment. And then scooting up the US East Coast there. And that looks pretty clear cut from where I'm sitting right now. The main uncertain part right now is whether it reaches hurricane status south of Cuba. And you know what those waters are like, and you can't rule out a substantial intensification phase. It's got over 12 hours in that area. I'm not familiar with the names of the features on the island of Cuba, but the southern part that juts out there, that little peninsula, and towards the central part of the country, it's got 12 hours in that area with very warm sea surface temperatures.
Yeah. I would just like to give a recon update from what I have seen. It looks like the NOAA plane, it took off from South America, and it looks to be it's heading back stateside. So it looks like it's finished its recon mission. I know it's been out there since about 15Z, so it's been out there for a while. It looks like that recon is finished for now. I know on the last drop sonde, which was 21, I'm not sure what they found in 22 and 23 from the drop sondes, but drop sonde 21, that was the last drop sonde that I know of, and that's what they used for, the NAC used for the advisory. They did find a pressure of 998. So that is the update on Recon. There wasn't a lot of strong barbs compared to the Recon from earlier this morning, which still had hurricane force wind barbs. There were no hurricane force wind barbs in this Recon that went through. The strongest was one barb at 60 to 64 knots, and then after that was I think about 4 or 5 at 55 to 60 knot barbs, and then after that a bunch of yellow and orange barbs, which are 45 to 50 and 50 to 55.
Was there another Reconnaissance plane out this evening?
I'm not sure if they have
Still
another
upcoming?
Recon heading out.
Yes, we are
tonight.
supposed to
Oh, there
have
is?
a Recon. We're supposed to have a Recon airplane go through for a fix by 0Z.
So there is another Recon heading out
Yes.
then. Okay.
There
thank
is
you, Ben.
supposed to be one.
So that's in
And that
2
would
to
be our
3
third
hours.
one of the day.
Okay, some more questions about the CDPS actually. Does it also take into account that poorer countries like Haiti have less of an infrastructure to deal with impacts like the heavy rain?
No, this does not take into account any sort of geographical features or any type of population features or anything like that. This is strictly just for the intrinsic, all of the intrinsic values within the storm itself.
Yep. Is there a possibility it could become a Category 2? Honestly, I think it could along the southern coast of Cuba if it's over that warm water for 12 hours and it decides to get its act together. I'm not saying it will happen, but I think we've seen stranger things in the Atlantic of late.
I think that would be, in my opinion, its absolute most peak, and I would say it would be at a bare minimum Cat 2 if it did even reach Cat 2.
I agree with that as well. The possibility's there. It's not likely, not saying it can't happen, but it's very unlikely that it will happen.
I'm seeing in the chat that someone, I guess, is doing storm reports on Elsa. Barbados suffered a bit of wind damage, and they're also saying, but we're not sure. I'm not sure where those were, but unfortunately, it looks like 2 people have been killed from Elsa.
Yep, that's what we're hearing. And flooding and power outages. Let's see what else we've got here. Can Elsa re-intensify after possible landfall at Hispaniola or after landfall at Cuba, as National Hurricane Center forecast shows? Well, the short answer is yes. By how much? Probably not a huge amount. Is anything expected to form in the next 3 weeks? So looking ahead, out in the Atlantic, I assume, there's not much on the cards yet, but things could change. In the Western Pacific, there's a system that's about to form.
And in a matter of fact, I'm sorry to cut you off, and I know somebody said it earlier. The JTWC did issue a tropical cyclone formation alert on 96W earlier, and then shortly after, and I'd say in the last 30 to 45 minutes, the JMA has designated 96W as a tropical depression.
So there you go, action on the other side of the world now as well, which I'm sure our team will cover with video updates if necessary, as we take a look
if
at
they're
that
needed,
one.
then we will, yes.
If the storm moves slower in the eastern Caribbean Sea, would we be looking at a major hurricane at this point? We had a similar question earlier, and I think the general consensus is quite possibly yes.
Yeah, Devin mentioned it earlier, and I did as well, and I'm gonna reiterate what we both said earlier. If this was moving at like 10, 15 miles an hour, and it wasn't shearing itself, and the LLC and the MLC were stacked on top of each other, yeah, I think you could be talking about a major in the Caribbean. I personally think it would be a low end major based on the sea surface temperatures over there being 28 Celsius. But yeah, I don't think a major, if it was moving slower, a major would have been out of the realm of possibility for Elsa.
And more questions there about whether people should stop joking about the storm. Well, I for one have never been joking about the storm. I know some people get ahead of themselves. Certainly people shouldn't be joking about the storms.
Yeah,
You know, I can only
this is
speak for
this is a
myself.
pretty serious.
Yeah,
I mean, this
it's
is
serious.
only a this is a pretty serious storm, and again, should not be taken lightly. Should not be joked around with, especially since now we've heard it's actually killed some people. This really is no laughing matter.
Will New England be impacted by the storm? A little bit far out on the forecast, but I wouldn't say no to that.
I know some of the models and just the weather forecast in general have been saying remnants. And I'm here in New Jersey. I'm the closest one to New England. So some of the models and the weather forecast in general have been saying the remnants of Elsa is going to bring some rainfall to us around mid to late next week. And I saw a couple of models were saying a possible landfall in Massachusetts around Cape Cod, or just to the southeast or around the Vineyard. I'm not saying that's going to happen. That's just what some of the models are predicting. It could just go out to sea once it comes off of the shoreline, whether it comes off of Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey. It can honestly go anywhere. But the impacts right now for Mid-Atlantic New England, not really certain about that. Just the weather forecasts are calling the remnants are just going to give us some normal rain, which also will probably mix with a front that's going to push it out of the U.S. come mid to late next week. But as of right now, we don't know what's going to happen for New England.
We'll load up some model graphics shortly to show you the latest on the GFS at least, but we'll just waiting for that to load. So looking once again, this is the latest visible imagery once again of the storm. And not too far away from sunset now by the looks of things. A little while longer yet. Let's take a look back at the infrared, see if we can get a little bit of a better look in at the storm there. A gap appearing once again there towards the center. It's not getting a sustained activity or energy going at the minute, is it? rather stop-start. After Elsa, how long do you think the Atlantic will be quiet? Is the question there. Well, there was a rumbling of a potential tropical wave behind Elsa. There is still one model ensemble that wants it to develop into a storm later on down the line in the Caribbean in about 10 days or something. So I wouldn't put much stock into that, but it's a non-zero chance, even though it's probably very low. Can we point out where the center is compared to the satellite imagery? I will be able to do that when I go back to the other imagery that I was showing earlier, so I'll get onto that shortly. If Elsa will take a Dennis path, will it become a hurricane when it makes landfall in Florida? If it was going to do a Dennis, well, the sea surface temperatures don't look that hot up there, so I think it would struggle. It's a bit early.
Yeah, it would struggle, especially for where I showed the area that is 28, maybe high 27s for the sea surface temperatures. So it would struggle definitely if it tried to do a Dennis type path.
Okay, so we'll be taking a short break now whilst we gather our thoughts once again ahead of the next hour of coverage on Tropical Storm Elsa. We'll take more questions and we'll get on to looking at models and some satellite imagery and take a look at where the center of the storm is right now as well after this. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. good evening. This is Force 13 Live, another hour of coverage on Tropical Storm Elsa, which is very close to the coast of Haiti, roughly 30 miles offshore. Currently, it is 6 p.m. on the US East Coast. It's 10 p.m. Universal Time, and we'll be here, I don't know how long for, actually, covering Elsa on this evening. But we'll do it diligently and to the best of our ability, of course. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team once again for this hour. We have Mike, Christian, Devon, Joey, Jonesy, and Ryan S. Good evening to all of you once again. Thanks for joining us for another hour.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here.
And for those who have questions for us whilst we're on the air, we will take them whilst we're here. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. It will light up for us. I know we had a few from the last hour just to carry over. And we'll get onto one or two of those in a moment. But first of all, from California weather, how much will Elsa affect the sea surface temperatures?
That's a good question. Let me bring back up the sea surface temperatures because I think possibly in the Eastern Caribbean they've cooled off a little bit because of Elsa.
They are a little bit cooler. I'm not sure if it was already like that. It moved over the area pretty fast.
Yeah, it moved over the area
it did.
pretty quickly. So it looks to like that it did some kind of path like that. So there is an area where this 28 in orange and another 28 degrees Celsius in orange is now
We're not able to
disconnected.
see this, Jonesy.
Oh, I forgot I'm not live. Lol.
So a little moment there at your end. Let's see if we can get that up on our screen now. There we go.
So that's going to blooper reel. So this orange and this orange of 28 degrees Celsius waters, I'm not sure if it was connected before Elsa moved through. I wasn't really looking at the sea surface temperatures beforehand. But if it was, then it probably did some kind of path similar to like this, to where it did disconnect it. So definitely it's a bit cooler now.
I would suggest probably up to a degree.
Probably up to, maybe up to a degree cooler. As for where it is right now, it's about, I'd say about here. And when it moves through Cuba, we're definitely going to see some cooling of the 29 and 30 degrees Celsius waters. The main question will be how much will we see cooling of the waters?
Well, the main question I have is how will the waters help the storm?
That is true. And
of course, that is the secondary question there. The sea surface temperature is dropping for the future, of course.
And how much it helps the storm will determine how much the sea surface temperatures taper off and die off after Elsa moves through.
All right, we have loads more questions. At least I think so. Is the CDPS higher in poor countries or countries with little infrastructure? We mentioned that earlier.
It is not.
How it has no effect, right?
No, there's no effect whatsoever. The CDPS is a rating on the storm itself, just the storm. Does not take into account any of the peripheries. So no, it would not account for any sort of geographical features. It wouldn't account for any GDP differences. It wouldn't account for anything like that. Just the storm itself.
Okay, Ali asks, what caused the storm to slow down when Elsa neared Hispaniola?
It didn't slow down much. It's only slowed down 1 or 2 miles an hour. Mainly, I'd say probably mountain interaction is what caused it to slow down a couple miles an hour. Unless Ali means by wind speed, then definitely land interaction, as well as it moving so quickly through the Caribbean, caused it to weaken in wind speed because it started shearing itself apart, and the low level circulation and the mid-level circulation are just not
The
together.
the high pressure to the north and east of it is moving away. It's moving further north and to the north and east.
So it's
So-
under less influence then.
Correct. There's less influence of steering currents. That's what's causing the storm to slow down.
A few more questions and comments there. What are we expecting peak intensity right now? Well, aside from the one it's already attained, the one upcoming that we're expecting, realistically, 75, maybe 80 miles per hour.
Yeah, I think that's what I've been predicting myself for Cuba. As long as it misses the mountains in the southern tip of Cuba, I think it can make a secondary peak as a hurricane. The question is, when does it do it, and what kind of land interaction will it have with the mountains in southern Cuba? But I think we'll see another peak at 75 or 80 miles an hour. And landfall in Cuba, I think, will be anywhere from where we're at right now, 70 miles an hour to up to 80 miles an hour. I don't think you will see any higher than that. Maybe you get 85 or 90, but that's pushing it, in my opinion.
Okay, there was also a comment about how not enough people take it seriously when it's not a major hurricane. Fully agree with that.
Well, that's, yeah, definitely fully agree.
First thing people look at is the category number. You know, when it was... what I will always remember was the attitude that a lot of people in the mainstream had when Dorian dropped from Category 5 to Category 4 right off the coast of Florida. And about half of the people just completely, shut down by that point. They weren't interested anymore.
I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Dorian kind of stalled as a Category 5 for 2 whole days.
Yeah.
So that probably has more to do with people just being burnt out.
Well, yes, there is that.
Just straight up being burned out.
We certainly were when we were on the air that whole time, pretty much.
Yes.
And not only that, it's like when people hear, oh, it's a tropical storm, oh, it's Cat 1, I'm not going to take it seriously. Well, I mean, we still have...
Yes.
And yeah, the CDPS being not that high. So I think people think, oh, I'm going to be fine.
4
But
is
4
really high, actually.
It's high, yeah.
4 is, like I said, once you get above 3, you're already better than half of all of the other landfalls since 1988.
Yeah, I mean, so 4 is pretty high.
Like, 1 is something that I would consider to be a write-off or pretty insignificant.
Danny.
2, that's starting to get serious. 3, that's really where you're starting to get on the borderline of a $1 billion disaster. 4, if a 4 hits a populated area in the United States, it's virtually a guaranteed $1 billion disaster.
And that's just a 4 out of 10.
And that's just the 4 out of 10. Correct.
And also, this is 70 miles per hour right now. A few more miles per hour, it's a Category 1 hurricane, and yet the distinction is there that it's only, as people might say, a tropical storm.
Yeah.
But then, the argument is that you have to draw those markers somewhere. You have to delineate somehow, and that's just where it ends up.
And also, when people say, oh, it's only a tropical storm, oh, it's only a Cat 1, well, they can still drop a lot of rain. They can still push in a nice amount of surge. I mean, as we've seen with some of the recent cyclones around the world tropics this year, we've had Enrique that just went through the East Pac and dropped a lot of rain across portions of western Mexico. We have Elsa now here in the Atlantic. We had Yas over in the North Indian Ocean before the monsoon season started. So, I mean, and all those were Category 1 hurricanes.
Yep.
Now then, just seeing a little bit of convection blowing up maybe on the left-hand side of the center. Let's just see if we can get... we've not looked at any mesoscale floaters today, actually. We need to get onto that and see what we can see there. I'm just going to work on that now and try and get it up here. This is the latest mesoscale, which delivers images of the storm every 1 minute. And the latest image here is from just 1 minute ago. Remember the days of old when the latest satellite image was about an hour and a half old? Well, the last image on this loop is 1 minute old, showing the storm's progress very close to the coast of Haiti. Not really showing that. Oh yes, just that tiny little bit of black on the left hand side there might not amount to much, but that is just happening right now.
It's also because I know I've seen some people mention it in the chat, and I know during our breaks we've mentioned it. Let's just talk about that convection burst over Cuba, which right now it's not connected to. It's not connected to Elsa, but it's still a very nice convection burst over southern Cuba right now.
And you better believe that's going to be dropping a lot of rainfall.
That's definitely dropping a lot of rain, which is before Elsa comes through. That's not good, because now you're talking about parts of that area which is going to be on already saturated ground once Elsa comes through, and that's why in the discussion they were saying flooding and mudslides and landslides are possible in Cuba.
As always tends to be the case with the with these areas, Greater Antilles and Central America tend to have that a lot. So that's the latest mesoscale imagery, which completely skipped my mind when we started up tonight, but there it is. And this is the, I believe, the continental United States imagery, which is every 5 minutes. I'm not even sure if it is, but that's a little longer loop to show you the storm's progress in that time. Alright, let's take a look. We can get onto the models now on my end here, where we're looking at the GFS scenario. So this is current, or from the last model run. We're probably doing this at a bit of bad time actually, because the new GFS is coming out as we speak, so maybe we could do both of them if someone could load up the new GFS when we're finished, when I'm finished here. So this is showing a very big mess of a storm. Right now, for those who wanted that fix earlier, the center is somewhere around here right now, and is going to move towards the northwest. In fact, there it is. It's a little behind, so the model initiates it there because it's an old run, and then it moves through towards its current position. So there it did forecast in its current position. In fact, it forecasted the GFS a little bit further south there, and that was as of, let's see, midnight UTC, so it's a couple hours ahead as well. And then off towards Cuba, really shrinking in its wind field as it goes along there, and up towards the northwest, sorry. Just try and zoom out. Nope, I knew that would happen. The pen tool gets in the way again. There it is, moving in towards the coast of Florida, so it moves over Cuba on that run, suggesting that not much in the way of tropical storm force winds will affect the island that much, and then onto the Keys, which gets quite a bit of tropical storm force winds, and then all up the coast there, Tampa and beyond, tropical storm force winds. There's the landfall in the Bend region, and then what's left of it continues through Georgia, and then looks like it becomes a front there off the east coast. Yep, and could deliver tropical storm force winds to New England and Atlantic Canada, becoming a big extratropical cyclone. I think after that, there it is, off it goes. So that's interesting to see. Let's just see if there's anything behind it there. Just to take a look. None of that is tropical cyclone, so no, nothing behind that. Just to take you on a very quick look around the globe, because we do have a global audience. The Eastern Pacific, not much expected to happen there in the next 10 days. This is how long the forecast goes on this particular graphic. The Western Pacific, we are looking at this area right now. That is an area of interest that's just been named, not named, but designated a tropical depression. And the GFS wants it to go up there and become a typhoon, actually, headed towards Taiwan in a few days' time. And there it is, near typhoon intensity. That's on the 5th, so that's just 2 days away. Clipping the southern coast of Taiwan, potentially as a Category 1 typhoon. And then moving on, the Indian Ocean is obviously very quiet, nothing going on here. Taking a look towards the southern hemisphere, sometimes you can get a surprise at this time of year, but it's not happening now. Nothing here. We of course saw what happened in the South Atlantic a few days ago. Just to keep your mind at ease, nothing else forecasted there for the time being. So that's a quick look around the whole globe, and let me just see if I can get some rainfall totals for this as well, looking towards, let's call it the next 5 days. And this is just of course another one model run again, showing you the areas that may get the most amounts of rain. And if we can just do a probe on this to get the numbers. So you're looking in some parts of Haiti there, 6 inches of rain. Could of course be locally higher. Jamaica doesn't look like it's going to get a huge amount, 3 inches maybe in the easternmost part, because it is on a very bare side of the storm. Of course, if it drifts further south, then you could get some of those yellows creeping in. Looks like ground zero really is the tip of Cuba there, towards the bottom left hand side. 12 inches just off the coast there, and another area in northern Cuba, east of Havana, around 10. And then moving up the Florida Keys, the westernmost Keys, 4-5 inches. The western part of Florida, between Naples and Tampa, 4-5 inches. Inland a little bit higher as well there, on the I-4 corridor. And then further north towards Jacksonville, maybe 4 or 5 inches. These areas here that we're looking up towards that top left, along the Gulf Coast north, is that trough feature that's moving through right now. Could deliver some areas of 12 inches near the I think that's not far from Tallahassee if I zoom in to its southwest. So that's our general look at what we're looking at in terms of rainfall. I'll throw it back to our team just now whilst we look at the mesoscale imagery, and I'll get some more imagery up at my end to try and get a new center fix on this.
So, back to, because I know you mentioned we have a global audience, back to just a brief mention on 91W, or not 91, sorry, 96W.
96W.
Yeah,
96.
thank you. I don't know why I said 91. 96W. It's going to go through some very warm waters. 31 degrees Celsius waters once it gets towards Taiwan. Around 30, maybe high 29s. So it's going to be dealing with warm water throughout its lifespan. There's little pockets of 32s, but that's going to be nowhere near where the storm is expected to go. That's mainly just out in the sea and close to northern Luzon in the Philippines.
So we had that run that we were just showing then, and I know we have the new one that's coming in right now. Can we show the new one at all? I don't have it at my end here. And then maybe we can compare and contrast the changes in the new GFS run just now. Does anyone have that available to them here?
I'm not sure what website you use for the GFS, so I do not have it on my end. I'm not sure if anyone else has it.
I've loaded up Tropical Tidbits just now.
I see that Mike is trying to get it up, but doesn't appear to be working for you there.
Yeah, it's not available yet.
I'm pretty sure it is. I'm just going to see if I can look for myself here on my end. I won't be able to show this to the screen, but I'll be able to describe to you what the new model run is saying. Yep, it's... I think that's really trending weaker.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here as well. It doesn't really seem to get, it doesn't really seem to strengthen anymore in this run here that I'm seeing. Yeah, it's definitely trending weaker than the last run.
Oh, you've got it up on your screen now, Joey. Let's have a look at this properly here. So there it is. You can depict that low pressure. That's 1008, is it?
1006.
1006. Can't quite read the numbers there. And then it goes very close to Jamaica. The thing is, though, initializing at 1006, was it?
Yeah, it was.
But we know that to be a bit too weak, so how do we make sense of the rest of the model run if the initialization is a bit weaker than what it actually is right now?
The
And it even
GF
hasn't gone up.
Man, I can't speak. The GFS usually initializes weak. So that's not really much of a surprise.
Does that mean that the rest of the run will be weaker than what it will be, though?
I wouldn't use the GFS to determine the strength of the storm. That's typically not a good thing. I would stick to statistical models or the HWRF or HMON. I would stick with the GFS to figure out what the track will be.
Alright, well, do we know what the statistical models are saying right now?
Well, does anybody know what the ship's model is saying? Because I haven't looked at it once.
No, I haven't been able to get there either.
Yeah, the ship model. Don't look at it. It doesn't
What's
take
wrong
into.
with What's wrong with the ship's model now? The ship's model's been one of the best statistical models over the past 5 years.
Yeah, if it just thinks the whole world is just ocean and doesn't take into account land.
You're thinking of something else. I don't know necessarily what you're thinking of there, but there's a ships that doesn't include land, there's a ships that does include land, and then there's the decay ships.
Alright, I've got it for you, Devon. The latest ship's model is going with 70 knots in 3 days and gradual intensification till then.
Okay. So that's probably the one that is not taking land into account. I need to find the actual page here. They've changed everything.
Decay ships, that one is calling for overall gradual weakening. That second peak is there at 55 knots.
That's what I would go with is decay ships. That's usually the operational.
And that is pretty much the National Hurricane Center's forecast.
Yeah. The decay ships is usually really, really good when it comes to getting the intensity of storms. So.
Oh yeah, I see that now.
Alright, as we continue looking at the rapid scan, this is always updating. You can see that black area on the western side has grown just a little bit. Whether that will be a dominating convective blow-up in moments to come, we're going to find out. Let's see if we can take some more questions. Send them in. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. I'm hearing from one or two people that Recon are heading back into it now. Is that true?
Give me 1 second. Yes, it looks like a recon team is starting to head towards it. They are now leaving from Florida. It looks like they won't be down there though, probably for another 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah, so we're looking at the next mission being... Was it a different plane that would be coming in, or is it that one that's
If
getting
you're
there
looking,
first?
so the one that's leaving was a NOAA plane. The one that's heading towards it is an AF-300, so that is an Air Force plane. I believe that's the Hurricane Hunters.
Yep.
Well, all of them are Hurricane Hunters, but the Air Force Hurricane Hunters.
So when do we think we'll get news on that? It'll be a few hours?
Well, according to what I'm seeing, it looks like they just took off from South Florida, so I'd say, yeah, a few hours is safe bet.
Alright, let's take some more questions then. Will it ever have an eye?
All right. Will it ever have an eye? Probably not at this point. So I finally got the actual ship's diagnostic file up. It's about time. That took forever because it's difficult to pull up FTP links in browsers now for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm taking a look at this. The ship's model, you have 60 knots initially, weakens it to 45 knots over land, strengthens it to 55 knots in 3 days. I believe it would be over the Florida Straits, if I'm not mistaken, and then weakens it from there on out. Weakens it pretty quickly over land. The LGEM seems to be right in line with that. And the D ship's model also seems to be right in line with that. So I would suggest that, yeah, it seems like that this storm's... I don't know if it's going to really strengthen to the south of Cuba. I think its best chance of strengthening is going to be in the Florida Strait.
Interesting.
Oh, interesting.
At least that's what the ships is suggesting, that the best chance for it strengthening is going to be in the Florida Strait, not to south of Cuba. But we'll see.
There it is once again right now. Tropical Storm Elsa still just shy of hurricane status. And making its closest approach to Haiti pretty much right now. We'll be back in a moment. We're taking a short break here. We'll be back with more questions and more analysis on the storm. Over the years, we've done updates and live coverage on literally hundreds of tropical cyclones, and in recent years, particularly in 2020, launching out in other regional channels, doing weather updates and coverages there as well. We also launched our Earthquakes channel in 2020 and are going forward on all fronts in 2021 with a community that's grown remarkably in the last year. But it's not just about you being along for the ride, we want you to enjoy yourself as well as an Ultimate fan, and that's why we've lined up a big chain of benefits for each various stages on our Ultimate Fan program. We're back live with the latest on Tropical Storm Elsa, which looks like this right now on the rapid scan, the Mesoscale floater from GOES 16. We're here for another half hour, then we're going to finish up for the time being. given that the storm isn't changing rapidly. We might have more live discussion. I'm not sure if other team members might be doing stuff later tonight, but we of course have our Discord server, which has chat all the time in there, and quite often a few of our team members go on there. They have these stage channels there now, where people can listen in to basically like live streams, but interesting in any case, and you can raise your hand to speak and whatnot. But there we go, that's our Discord server, discord.gg/Force13, if you're interested in that after tonight's discussion. In the meantime, you can keep sending in your questions. We'll have any more updates as they come in. I'm not sure if we will have any news. All that came in towards the start at 5 p.m. Eastern. Will Mississippi or Alabama be impacted by this storm is a question that came in there from 4-State Weather.
We keep on hearing this question. Will it impact Mississippi? Is this going to make landfall in Mississippi? What is it going to do to Mississippi?
That's the first time I've heard it tonight.
We got the question ad nauseum last night.
Okay.
But Mississippi, probably not going to receive a direct impact from this storm. There's going to be rip currents. There's going to be beach erosion threats. Potentially a little bit of storm surge to go along with that as well. Maybe a little bit of rainfall from the outer bands. I wouldn't expect much more than that.
Yep, you can see on the wind speed probabilities a little corner of Alabama there with the 5 to 10% area. That's about as much as it's going to be. Has there ever been a storm with a CDPS rating of 10? Yes, there has.
Yes, there's been plenty.
Yes, there has.
What was the last one now?
The most recent one would be Dorian,
Blimey.
2019.
J.O. wants to know, is there an ASCAT pass coming up?
No.
Oh.
That's probably the easiest way to answer that question, is just no, ASCAT is very, very far away. So that's not in the store at all.
Here's some water vapor imagery. Sometimes that can give you more clues towards where the center of the storm is. We pretty much know where it is. It's just off that peninsula. I really need to get to brush up with the geography of Haiti in particular. We haven't covered this area in quite some time. The area south of Port Salut, which is on that little mini peninsula that juts out, the center of the storm is most likely just a couple dozen miles south of there at this moment. More questions here as well. Let's see if we have any. I'm at the Pacific coast and waves are very high. Do you know why? That's a question from Rodri Juarez. I assume.
Well, it wouldn't be.
in Mexico.
It wouldn't be in association with Elsa.
I can tell you there's some general thunderstorminess that's going on over towards the coast of Mexico. You can see all this going on here, all a bit messy. Nothing that could really become a tropical cyclone in that, but maybe it's coming from some of that. A very diverse picture on the weather scene across the tropical Atlantic and Pacific right now. Massive dry area off the western coast of Mexico north, and then you've got that trough that's digging right down into the Gulf there, and then of course you've got Elsa, and massive dry air east of Elsa, by the way, and we were looking out for that other potential wave. I don't think we can really distinguish it at all. You can see generally where it would be, but there's nothing really coming of that.
Nope.
And if you look really east, you can just about make out Africa, the coast of Africa there. Not much going on. Sometimes systems could look very good emerging off the African coast and completely capitulate once they reach the ocean. That happens time and time again. Let's see if we can take some more questions right now. Do we think it's maintaining, strengthening, or weakening? And how will the trend change in the coming 12 hours?
I believe the models have been trending weaker and weakening.
The models are saying that the storm should weaken on its way to Cuba. And it will start strengthening once again once it gets into the Florida Straits. That's what's predicted by the ships at the very least. Basically just pretty much too close to land. Some land-induced strengthening can happen, considering how close to the coast it is, and there's some pretty tall mountains here. So there is a possibility that this can briefly become a hurricane again. I'm not expecting much, though.
Here's a real close-up right now on the late visible images. You can see it's getting dark now. And you can generally make out where the center is. It's underneath that convection, possibly slightly southwest of it. So I would say it's probably past Port Salut, maybe 10 or 20 miles west if you were to draw a ruler vertically. And then you would go south maybe 20 or 30 miles. So let's see if we have some more questions here. If this was to follow the best track for this storm by Jamaica towards western Cuba, what would you say for the storm intensity wise? So basically past Jamaica, pretty close towards western Cuba, mainly over water.
If it were to swing way out, it can definitely gather more intensity than if it was just to hug the coast of Cuba, but that's pure speculation at this point because that's pretty unlikely to happen.
And if it continues moving due westward, it looks like it would actually make a landfall in Jamaica. So for it to miss Jamaica, it would have to go north, which is what forecasted, or go south. If it continues moving due westward, it would make a landfall in Jamaica. So, and that would still cause land interaction, which would kill the storm.
Yes.
So we can't really give a guise of how it would be if it,
Basically,
missed Jamaica.
Basically, take a look at the HWRF, what that ended up doing. That's what the storm could have done. The storm's not doing that because it went to the north of that prediction. So, there you go.
Rapid scan once again. Is it me, or is it starting to look a little better again?
Well, considering convection's firing up, yeah, it's going to start looking a little bit better.
What do you think we might see with the evening Recon flight?
Probably more of the same than what we've seen from the other Recon flights. I'm not expecting any surprises.
Well, that's good. We hate surprises.
Yeah, we do.
And more questions there about when will it slow down? Is it slowing down? It's slowing down slowly.
Everyone seems to be really fixated on this slowing down part, and I think a lot of it has to do with the anxiety from previous landfalling storms. Because they hear the phrase slow down, slow down, slow down, and they immediately turn their minds to Harvey, Dorian, and Eta. And the synoptic setup is just so radically different from those three storms. It's not going to stall. Don't think that it's going to stall. It's not going to do that. It's going to be very swift, and the storm's going to move on its merry way. It's slowing down from 30 miles an hour, and it's going to slow down to about 15 miles an hour, let's be frank. So
the stalling is reserved for later in the season.
We're not stalling. We're just slowing down, which the storm was going very anomalously fast to begin with.
Absolutely.
So I know a lot of people are really fixated on this slowing down.
It'll be slowing down to a pretty average speed, actually.
Yeah.
Correct. It's going to be slowing down to an average speed. I just feel like that there's a lot of anxiety being created by that phrase slowing down because of the devastating tropical cyclones that we've had over the past 4 years in the Atlantic due to storms slowing down. But those were storms that were moving at average speed and then slowed down to nothing.
I think most of it is anxiety, and then you just have the people out there that are evil that just want it to slow down so it can just rapidly intensify.
Well, we're
and
not
it's like-
we're not doing that. So
Yeah, we're not doing that.
we're not doing that. Anyways, next, Nathan.
Mohammed says, how come the storm has a very high pressure with its basically the question is with its wind speed and
Yes.
1000 millibars. It's quite high.
That mainly has to do with the fact that it's got it because it's moving so fast. Since it's moving so fast, it doesn't need to create that much of a pressure gradient in order to be able to induce the winds that it has.
Okay, short and sweet description there. Why are the tropical systems more south this season compared to the last ones?
That has a lot to do with the high pressure that has been over the Atlantic here. So that's been very strong and positioned to the south. And that is basically causing problems, to say the least.
But this is the first one, right? That's very south.
I guess it could be the first one.
I
But
mean,
there are others that are expected to form eventually.
Well, yes, but you know, it's not like 2017 when we had which one was it? Brett? Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh yeah, that's right. There was that really, really southerly storm that went into Trinidad. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, we're not seeing something like that, I guess.
All right. Looking at some other imagery here. This is the Devon's favorite, the shortwave infrared. Why is this your favorite, Devon?
It's the easiest to be able to depict basically the structure of the storm.
And looking into that there, you can see the convection once again. And yeah, the center of the storm nudging westward. Probably south-southwest of... Well, I forgot the name of that place already. Port Salut. And slowly heading west-northwestwards. Looks like it's going to miss landfall, but that doesn't mean very much with regards to land impact because the storm is close enough to deliver probably its worst punch to those coastal areas down there. Let's see what else we have right now. Why is Jamaica so hot before getting a storm? It happens in a lot of tropical areas, doesn't it? Before and after.
Yes. That has to do with the outflow of the storm. The outflow of hurricanes creates a high pressure in the upper atmosphere. It basically clears out the surrounding areas. And yeah, so that's going to create some hot and calm conditions before the hurricane actually comes through.
What would peak the expected intensity at... Let me try that one again. What would the expected peak intensity be at the Florida landfall? And could it regain
55
hurricane
knots.
status briefly before the Florida landfall? A question there.
Yes.
Yep.
The two answers are 55 knots and yes.
55 knots and yes. Will the Bermuda high pressure stay in a similar place during the main part of the season? Now that is one of the big parts to a hurricane season recipe, isn't it?
Yes, and considering the analog season of 2004, we are expecting the high pressure to pretty much stay right where it is. We're expecting to see a lot of very southerly storms.
Oh god, that's not good.
Yeah, 2004 is considered to be one of the best analogs for this year. And considering the South Atlantic activity and the suppressive phase in the East Pacific, I think that's going to continue to be pretty good.
That is a good point. Can it regenerate again in the northwest Atlantic after making landfall in Florida? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
What do you mean by
The
regenerate?
area where Claudette re-strengthened. Okay. So as it
It
shoots
wouldn't
out into the open Atlantic.
regenerate. It wouldn't regenerate. That would assume that the storm would die, and Claudette didn't die either. So I'm not quite sure of the question. The storm's expected to be a tropical storm, so
To simplify it a little bit, I suppose once it emerges off the U.S. East Coast, does it still have a chance by that point?
it won't be a hurricane. No.
No, but will it still be tropical?
Yeah, it could still be tropical. Probably more than likely will be, considering the track of the storm.
I just say that because the GFS model at the last run had it looked frontal by that point, or shortly after.
It could go either way, but we've seen storms still be tropical while emerging out of the Carolinas. If it goes that far north, which I really don't think it will.
Alright, looking back at the infrared imagery once again here, and you can see how it's looking here. Still got that blow up of convection towards the center, looking pretty decent. So looks like it's maintaining intensity is what I would suggest. Let's reiterate the watches and warnings because we haven't done that in a while. At 5 p.m. the storm was located at 17.5 north, 73.9 west. It'll be a bit west-northwest of there now. That was 130 miles southwest of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. 70 mile per hour winds, 1000 millibars. So the watches and warnings now. A hurricane warning for the southern portion of Haiti from Port-au-Prince to the southern border with the Dominican Republic. A tropical storm warning for the coast of Haiti north of Port-au-Prince and the southern coast of Dominican Republic from Punta Palenque to the border with Haiti. The Cuban provinces of Camagüey, Granma, Guantanamo, Holguin, Las Tunas, Santiago de Cuba, Diego de Avila, Sancti Spiritus, Villa Clara, and Cienfuegos, and Jamaica. Tropical storm warning for all of those areas. A hurricane watch for many of those Cuban provinces: Camagüey, Granma, Guantanamo, Holguin, Las Tunas, and Santiago de Cuba. And a tropical storm watch for the south coast of the Dominican Republic, east of Punta Palenque to Cabo Engano. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, the eastern islands of the Cayman Islands. The Cuban provinces of Matanzas, Mayabec, and Havana. And the Florida Keys from Craig Key westward to the Dry Tortugas under a tropical storm watch. And those watches will probably spread later on. A reminder of storm surge estimates for the coast of Hispaniola. For a little while longer, 2 to 4 feet of surge is possible. And for the southern coast of Cuba, we could be looking at 3 to 5 feet. Craig Key, Florida to Dry Tortugas, 1 to 2 feet currently expected. In terms of rainfall for southern Hispaniola and Jamaica, rainfall of 4 to 8 inches with isolated maximums of 15. In Cuba, rainfall of 5 to 10 inches with isolated maximums of 15. In the Cayman Islands, 3 to 6 inches expected, could lead to scattered flash flooding. And of course, significant flooding and mudslides possible in Cuba and in Hispaniola. And for the Florida Keys and the Florida Peninsula, 2 to 4 inches with localized maximums up to 6. Which may result in isolated flash urban and minor river flooding. And of course, swells generated by the storm will spread westwards across the Caribbean Sea through the weekend. These swells are likely to cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions. And so please consult products from your local weather office. The National Hurricane Center's next updates will be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for the intermediate advisory, and the full advisory at 11. I'm sure one of our team will have an update in some form on those advisories. Of course, we have our social platforms where you can stay in touch with all the news as it breaks. Plenty of options that we have. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and of course our Discord server where our community congregate pretty much. discord.gg/force13, and here on YouTube as well. We have our automated stream, which will be running when we're not talking on the air. So when we finish up in a few minutes, it will if you're on a live link, youtube.com/force13/live, it will throw you back to the automated stream. So that's a pretty decent thing as well, which we have now. Thanks to the technological innovations, things can still go wrong, but we get there most of the time. We're really on to closing comments at this point from our team, so if any of you want to speak up at this point, go right ahead. Don't be too shy.
To say, right?
I've got nothing.
Okay.
You're in the path of Elsa, whether you're in Florida, Hispaniola, Jamaica, Cuba, Cayman Islands, just listen to the NHC, listen to your local offices, and stay safe. We already know Elsa is a deadly storm from the Lesser Antilles, and we don't want any more deaths to occur from it.
There are some more quick questions. David says, which model would you all recommend for forecasting the evolution of hurricanes this year?
Oh
It
my
depends on what
goodness.
it depends on what you're asking for.
Okay.
What evolution of what?
Literally forecasting hurricanes, I think they're talking about.
That's really the question right now, is evolution of what exactly?
I really think the question is just as simple as forecasting hurricanes.
But forecasting what about hurricanes? Forecasting the formation of hurricanes? Forecasting the intensity
Okay,
of
I
hurricanes?
see what you mean.
Forecasting the track of hurricanes? Like, that's a very broad question.
Is there an overall winner?
No.
Okay, so it's not as simple as that. So we'll see if David comes back with a follow-up there. What do we think of the new convection burst over Elsa right now?
Oh, it's on the
fine.
east side.
Near the center.
Fine. It's near the center. It's on the east side of the center. Just seeing a couple pixels of between -80 and 90 cloud tops, but it's mainly in the -70 to -80 range. That doesn't mean the storm's strengthening, because it's just interacting with the mountains of Haiti. So it's a nice burst, and it's got a lot of rain in it. So.
One thing I should ask, actually, after looking at the GFS model earlier, is that it showed that the wind field would really capitulate and shrink a lot. Do we think that's going to happen here? And I was talking about the next 24 hours, really.
I know the models have been trending it getting weaker and weaker. It's definitely a possibility, especially because when it's passing in between Jamaica and Haiti, and when it gets into basically the water where it's in between Cuba, Jamaica, and Haiti, there is a chance that where it's got a tri-land interaction, it does that. But yeah, I think it's fairly reasonable that it could shrink if it does the weakening trend like the models are predicting.
Do we think 95L was the reason Elsa got big due to the fact it took all the wind shear and dry air?
That really doesn't have anything to do with anything. That is... It didn't take all the dry air away. Elsa was always sufficiently south enough to the dry air where it wouldn't have to deal with it. So the 95L really has had almost nothing to do with 97L and Elsa's formation.
Alright, so let's try this model question again. For track, Devon, what do you think is the best model out there for this year?
For track, I personally would blend the GFS with the ECMWF. If you take those two together, you can usually get a pretty good guess as to where the system's going to go, because usually the GFS is too far one way, the ECMWF is too far the other way. If you put them somewhere in the middle, you're usually at about the right thing.
And for intensity?
For intensity, you would want to
You're
really
bigging up
use
the ships.
Yeah, you would want to use a statistical model for intensity. You can use the HWRF or HMON. Those are very powerful dynamical models that are specifically made for hurricanes. They're pretty good with intensity, but they can be really bullish, especially in the case of the HWRF. However, I would stick to statistical models. The SHIPS is a fantastic model, especially when trying to predict rapid intensification. The SHIPS model alone basically allows our rapid intensification forecasting skill to go from we get it only about 10% of the time to us getting it about 30% of the time. So it's really phenomenal in regards to intensity forecasting. Is it perfect? No. There's no single perfect intensity forecast out there. So
Naturally, otherwise we wouldn't need to forecast.
Exactly. But there's what I'm saying is that it's not. It can be very far off still, despite being the best. You're still talking about an average of 15 to 20 knots errors for hurricanes past 24 hours. So you're still looking at high errors no matter what model you're using. Just the statistical models, they tend to do the best, but don't take their outputs as gospel by any means.
Do we think... no, we had one. Do we think Elsa could only hit one part of Cuba, or most of it? Looking like it's going to be over half of it on the eastern side. We are at a time now, though, so I'm going to have to close here. But just seeing if there's any more questions just here right now. Is Elsa undergoing rapid intensification? No, thankfully it isn't. Why is it rapidly moving like I've never seen that speed in a while? Quickly, what was the reason for the speed? It was mainly the high pressure ridge.
Yep,
So,
the Bermuda High and the trade winds.
A strong influence from the high pressure ridge. Just to reiterate, as we finish up here, we'll probably have more people taking over later on tonight. If not, we have our automated stream. Just for timings, it'll be passing closest to Jamaica, probably at the early hours of Sunday morning. It will be moving through Cuba Sunday afternoon into Monday afternoon. And they will reach Florida probably Monday evening, the Keys, and then Tuesday morning and afternoon for the western coast. That's our current indications right now, and that's how far the storm is away from those locations. If you are there, and if you're under any of those watches and warnings, of course, you've got to do the necessary to stay safe in the storm. And of course, for the rest of Florida, looking ahead towards the storm, make sure your preparations are set and in order. Thanks very much to my team for helping us out for this section of live coverage on this potentially major storm event, Tropical Storm Elsa. We'll have more updates across the Force 13 network over the next few days. Thanks for watching. Good night.